Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
Well, I'm working on my stand-up routine because I've had many jobs in my life, and the one that I have not had yet is stand-up. You know, I tell a joke when I do these seminars. I go, give people sorry, not sorry. Flip the menu, baby. Flip the menu. There's two sides to that menu. Sorry, not sorry. That is, yeah. If you got no other free time,
I still don't get it.
did you watch?
Chilling at the school right now. I had some classes this morning. Just about to get settled into the day. Thought I'd make a pit stop on our Thursday conversation to see what's going on.
I see a similarity between you and Charlie Sheen. I don't know what it is, but I think it's towards the end of the video. So when you get to the end of the video, let me know what you think.
Good. I'm good. Happy to be here.
All right,
as
good.
always. You know, it's funny. You say, sorry, not sorry. You know how many people have said that to me? Sorry, not sorry. Like they know it's our tagline. So they send it to me in text, direct messages. You know, even some of my Brazil people are like, sorry, not sorry. And it's true. I don't know. It's what a great, you don't come up with many good things there, sir. But this one, I will have to admit,
There's something about
Pretty good.
the bad boy persona and the willingness to go against the conventions that resonates with people. And we've seen it in Taekwondo and other places in our life. But you said something interesting when we were talking before we got started, and it was about this idea of his friends. And take a good look at that group of guys, and you'll see it in music a lot. So if you're a fan of music like I am, you go back and you look at where the great rock and roll guitar players and musicians came from. They came from the same area, about
the comedians
5 or 10 miles, 20 miles apart in England. And they end up leading and being the best guitar players in the world in some of the greatest bands. And in this situation, you look at this group of people he was with. You know, he had Sean Penn, he had Nicolas Cage, he had himself, he had all these other kids, including his dad and stuff. And somehow, and his brother. And TJ got in the mix. I don't know how
I knew he
got in the mix,
like all that crazy stuff. But dude, I forgot. Like his wives were banging when he first got them, and they were like all these beautiful women, like Denise. I forgot that he was married to Denise Richards.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why, but like it's crazy. Like how many of those hot, popular,
ridiculous. But his dad, his dad was a stand-up actor, and then his brothers acted as well. And he was in some of the most seminal, greatest movies ever. He played the baseball player guy who was really, that was actually a great performance. But then he had other performances were just great. Great movie. Great. Paul Newman. And then of course we lost one of my favorite all-time All-American actors, Robert Redford, just in some great movies and stuff. My wife, I was like, well, honey, he was old. But anyway, enough of that. We got some serious business today. And I'm going to tell you that for the first time, probably the first time ever, it wasn't the gold medal idea. It wasn't the silver medal idea. It was the bronze medal idea. I don't want to remind him that I've been talking about doing it for a while, but he had this amazing idea on what we should cover. And actually, no, it is his idea, uniquely his. Mine was more about the sport in general. So I don't want to steal any thunder,
I don't know much about him. I only know like his acting career,
or take away any water from the great, the inimitable
some of the
bronze
things that they're talking about, I had no idea.
Who after this idea may be promoted to silver.
Younger, but I didn't realize he was like, like you said, a Hollywood bad boy like that, like out there,
Yeah. Yeah, Major League.
You know what I like?
Wild Thing.
That movie, that slapstick comedy, Hot Shots. Remember that one?
That was funny.
I know.
All right, go ahead, Coach.
That's crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
So, no, I think today I talked to Coach Reno. We talked a little bit offline. I thought we'd talk about kind of the makeup of like our Taekwondo athlete, or like what makes the certain athlete special. You know, we talked about a little bit before, the nature versus nurture side of the whole thing. I just wanted to pick you guys' minds a little bit about like, you know, kind of like that side of Taekwondo, and you know how we, from the creating of athletes early through building through later to ultimately, like we always talk about, the Olympic day and the Olympic podium. So, what do you think, Coach?
Well, I mean, I think it's I hear this word athlete a lot, and I think there's a big difference between an athlete and a combat athlete. First and foremost, I think there's probably a different
So I mean,
definition of athlete, combat athlete, and Taekwondo.
When you think about any
athlete,
sport,
as
I've been fortunate enough to look at a lot of different sports, as you guys have,
the fighting part of
kids are growing up,
Olympic
or whether
Taekwondo
your children
is
are growing up,
practically gone.
There are
really,
certain sports that are
debate that when it comes to
bio
physicality
kind of
and
sports where
and roughness.
the athletes need a certain body type
violence
or
right?
attribute.
Because in boxing
and
there's
most
violence,
Olympic
in MMA
committees,
there's violence, but in Taekwondo,
especially in socialized countries,
we're kicking and punching,
go
but
into
the violence
schools
is
and
not the
they
goal
choose athletes
at all.
that way.
It's to score
In China,
points,
they
and
get
to manipulate
kids,
the machine.
they measure them, they throw balls,
I
they
think
run,
first
they
and
jump,
foremost,
and then they put them in a sport.
I think
in Australia, which is not
an
a
athlete,
socialist
but
country,
they
did the same thing. The Australian Olympic Committee did that. And so in Taekwondo or in a fighting sport,
what's important right now
you have
for
outliers that
a
don't
modern
follow
Taekwondo
those
athlete?
biometrics,
I mean,
like a Mike Tyson,
I would imagine
who wasn't
there is some crossover,
necessarily a big heavyweight,
but
or Herb Perez, who wasn't a big middleweight.
And
so the good thing about
that when I think of an athlete, combative athlete, that are missing, that are not
boxing,
needed. If you
Taekwondo,
have them, good, but it is not
soccer,
100% crucial.
And the list probably goes on.
Strange,
as compared
that we're a martial art.
Basketball, right? Long distance running, right? And you can swimming, right? You need a certain size foot and reach and length in your hands, and flexibility in your shoulders. In Taekwondo, you don't necessarily, you can get away with certain things, but to go back to a Taekwondo athlete and what I think is necessary, whether it's today or 20 years ago or 40 years ago, is explosiveness. So fast twitch muscle fiber. It's a type of sport that's anaerobic, so you need that. On the physical side of it, you have much more of a cake where you can change the ingredients and still come with a good result. Coach Moreno was tall, way tall for his division, incredibly tall for his division. Not as tall as Mike O'Malley was for his, but certainly way taller than the majority of the guys on the team even. I think I lined up...
Like a Herb Perez?
I lined up next to you. That's how tall I was not. And so I think explosiveness and power, and I'll say the one thing that has changed, just to put a finer point on it, because I think the most important things we're going to be talking about are going to be intellectual, philosophical, and mental. The one thing that has changed is the composition of the body, and that's because of the scoring system. So you end up with taller, and I always call them K-poop fighters, tall, skinny guys who, to be honest, wouldn't have survived in this sport 40 years ago. They wouldn't have made, their bodies wouldn't have been able to put up with the argers of the sport. One last thing I'll say about that, though, because I'm always casting shade on the individual, is the current best hope for the U.S. in an Olympic. He probably could have survived in both sports. He could have survived in this generation, and if trained properly, would have survived in our generation, because he's physically a strong athlete. He's in good condition. He's athletic. And so he's the outlier on what I'm about to say. Aaron Cook could have survived and did survive in both sports. Didn't win, but could have survived in both sports.
Good.
Mm. I think explosiveness is the thing that was a big factor before that I'm going to say is not so much of a factor now. You don't necessarily need to be explosive. I think long term strength kind of plays a role. Cardiovascular strength, I would say, muscular strength, that type of situation, coordination. Um, Obviously, I would say we all want someone who's flexible, right, and kind of move their leg and their bodies in different ways. So I think if you had to prioritize something right now, it'd probably be coordination, flexibility, and some level of strength for me.
Listen, I was gonna say, Ms. Perez, like, first of all, I don't think we should ever think about the outliers. And I know in some of my Olympic courses that I did, way back when, they talked about wrestling, boxing, judo, taekwondo as a messy sport, because even though you do things in a certain way, kind of a building up phase, a pyramid phase of progression, if you're trying to develop an athlete, whether it's physically, technically, it doesn't matter, because there's always weird things that happen in a match. Where in a swimming or in a track and field, you have the start and then you have a go. And so it's, if you can swim 10,000 hours in this one stroke, you're going to improve by 0.2%, right? You can't say that in Taekwondo. So it's very difficult to measure up. So we're a messy sport. There's always variables. And I think that you're right, TJ, when we're looking at athletes, there's always going to be an outlier. There's always going to be a small guy. There's always going to be a super tall guy. There's always going to be someone that kind of defies the odds. And I think that's a big problem that a lot of people look at. I use somebody like, a guy I'm a big fan of, Abu Ghosh. Abu Ghosh was a 68 world Olympic champion in the Rio Olympics. He's a midget. He's shorter than me. And people try to fight like Abu Ghosh. He tries to train people like himself. But the problem is he's just a freak. He's just a guy that could do all this stuff. And I don't think you replicate that. I think that was just unique to him. That's why, again, no offense. I know he goes around and does things and kind of promotes his brand. But I have a little bit more respect for people that look at the Taekwondo as a whole and say, how can I build the small guy, the tall guy, the not flexible guy, the flexible guy, and give him the attributes or work around the attributes. And I would agree with you, TJ. Explosion is gone. If you have it, it's a good thing to get from point to A to point B. Speed does kill. But at the end of the day, you don't need to be fast anymore. It's such a static game, which is sad. I listened to a podcast with Terrence Crawford before the fight. I know it's popular to talk to about him now, but before the fight, and he was saying that his kids cannot play football or basketball. And they're like, why? Come on, bud. Why would you let them? They can make a lot of money. He's like, man, people always say that you could be whatever you want. He's like, he goes, no, you can't. He goes, that's a falsehood. If you're 5'10", you ain't playing basketball. He goes, I'm 5'9". My wife is short. My kids are going to be 5'6". They're not playing in the NBA. And don't give me this thing that this guy was 6 foot. There's some things you can't do. Some things you shouldn't be trying to pursue. And I thought about that. I liked his brutally honest, straightforward opinion.
No, I had a thing where I was
no matter how hard I train, no matter how hard I
to figure out.
how bad I
loved
want
all
it.
sports.
So I know it's
And
kind of
one
a
thing
little
that
bit
I
off
had,
topic, but I would say
we
yes,
said we were
TJ.
going to
First
talk
and
about
foremost in
ourselves a little
Taekwondo,
bit.
flexibility
I had
would
this
be number one
ability
for me,
to run
because even if you're short,
really
you can
fast
play
and cut.
the face
So
game.
I could run
if you have
really
a certain body
fast, and they used to
composition,
call me the
like you
Dodger
mentioned,
because I would run at
being,
people and then I'd cut.
the right size
like
for the
strangers
division,
on the
I
street
think
just
would
to
be
mess with.
really important.
I'd run at them and cut. And when we
Coordination
played
is
football
up there, but I think it's a
in
different
the
coordination,
street
because it's not a speed
and
coordination,
cars
right?
would
It's a
come and stuff
coordination
like that, I would run
to move your
and I'd
leg
be
and
able to
body
cut.
in
And so
certain
I
certain
played
positions. I would
football,
actually go
like in the street.
muscular
I
endurance.
played
Would be
basketball
really high.
in middle school, but I was so
standing on one
horrible.
leg,
I ran
fighting
track
people off
and
with
I was
one leg,
fast.
Just
but I didn't like to
kicking
practice
kicking
this.
like you
Yeah,
would
sprints.
kick a heavy bag.
And then
I
I
think
played
the muscular
I
endurance
played tennis
to be able to
because
sustain that for a
it was
true 2
I
minutes
just liked
nowadays
I don't know why I like
is
the game. But I did not
is
play.
really important.
I found when I found Taekwondo, which was pretty young,
Did you guys do other
and I needed it
sports
for
you played
self-defense.
growing
I
up,
didn't
though?
really do Taekwondo to go to the
Before
Olympics.
Taekwondo, I guess
Yeah,
became
then when
the
I
core
started
of,
to compete, I
what you
liked.
did, you know what I mean? Because at some
I
point you
like
probably
being
specialized in
able
just
to
started doing
hit
Taekwondo,
people.
I would
I
assume,
like being
right?
able to hit people, and
Was
I
it
liked
early,
it because it
later?
wasn't a
Yeah,
team
anybody
sport
can
where,
answer. I'm just curious.
Young, did you play other sports or not too much?
oh, I was a peace and love kid. I was a hippie. My mom was a hippie, so I had long hair, and I really didn't want to fight. And like she made me when I was 5 years old, and this is a story in my book, right? And it talks about me being 5 years old, and I'm in the courtyard because I lived in like the garden apartments, yeah. And I had a fight, and my sister protected me. So my sister brought me back in the house. She was a year younger, and told my mother. My mother took me by
Yeah.
the hand, didn't say anything, took me outside, told me to point out the kid. Now she says, go back in there and fight until he cries. And so I
Sprints.
did because
All
I didn't have a
sprints.
choice. And then I never wanted to fight
Forrest Gump.
again to the point where when I turned 9, I was reading all these Bruce Tegner books about martial arts. So I had like learned judo sweeps and karate punches. And then I walked by a Taekwondo school in Hoboken, New
Sport,
Jersey,
yeah.
and started training with this student
It's so
of
funny.
my Korean instructor, this gentleman, Master Anthony Alvarez, who was
Hey, let me ask you
a
something. When
national
you,
champion
because I know you didn't
and
play
just
organized
really good,
sports
and I had
growing
no
up, and
idea.
then you got into
But
martial
that's
arts.
why,
I know you said you used it for self-defense, and then you came here.
yeah,
Did you have a? Did you like fighting when you were young? Like before you did martial arts? Really? Really?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't have a choice because the school I walked into was all fighters. In other words, I was in a school of 25
Oh yeah, you
people,
told me about this.
and the way you survived the school was the first day you went in, you trained, and then you fought. And if you came back the next day, and I remember being like 9 or whatever, and they'd be like, he's at the end of the class, he goes, line up. And I just kind of stand there. He goes, you too. And I was, yeah.
Wow.
Where'd you grow up? Where'd you grow up? Is that it? That's a nice area. You didn't grow up in the hood or anything, right?
Okay, but how long? Wait. Okay, so you do all that. You didn't really like to fight. You get into martial arts,
So if you
and
didn't,
then
if you don't,
when
if you don't understand the word
you
hood, you didn't grow up
I
in
mean,
the
I don't know
hood.
if you're good right away or bad right away, but when you got in there, how quickly did you? Because everyone knows that you're
Yeah.
you are a brutal guy. You're a brutal trainer.
What did your
You're a
parents?
brutal
What did your
fighter.
parents do growing up?
You liked violence. So how early on did you know that you could be a good fighter? That
Yeah.
you
So you working
enjoyed
class family. Yeah. So you had a what we would call it, same as me, a blue collar upbringing, right? And your parents worked hard, so you had a place and things to do, and
Yeah.
you had money to be able to see your dreams through. Coach Moreno, where'd you grow up?
You too.
Mhm.
How about you, TJ?
I would fight if I had to. I didn't like the
No,
fight.
but what
It
about?
wasn't
Yeah.
Let's start with sports. Did you play other sports?
a little bit of football, a little bit of like 99 under football. I ran a little bit of track in late middle school, early high school. But it was that at that point, it was more so just I was trying to use it for sport conditioning in my head. But I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia. So right outside of like DC and Maryland area. I mean, it was normal life for me. I don't understand the word hood. For me, it was normal. I mean, we had good pockets of our neighborhood. We had worse pockets of our neighborhood. Um, I understand the word hood. I understand what you're saying. I mean, for me, it was the neighborhood. I know maybe that's not the best answer, but it was. My dad was a bus driver, and my mom was a produce manager for yeah.
I grew up in Illinois, in the suburb of Chicago, Illinois, a place called Zion. It was where I spent most of my life, when I kind of my formidable years. But like differently, I played all sports. I played baseball, I played soccer, I played hockey, I literally played organized sports since I was 5, and different than maybe you guys. Like, yeah, we had some very bad areas where I grew up, and like I literally fought every day. Like I remember walking home, and we'd go to a field, and the big guys, the
but you
sixth
like you
graders
said something
would be-
interesting.
they
Right?
call-
Like
my name was Mike. Mikey
I did it
Moreno,
for self-defense in the
because
beginning,
when I
and
was
it
little,
wasn't that
my
I didn't
grandparents
like
called me Mike because
fighting.
my middle name is
I like
Miguel.
competition.
And so
'cause
when I
was always
first went to
competing.
school as
and
a
then when I
kindergartner,
realized
I wanted to be called
that I
Juan.
could fight,
And so
I love
had
fighting.
friends from
I
the
love
street, for the
fighting in the
neighborhoods would
gym.
call
I
me
love fighting and
Mike,
whatever.
and then
But
people at school would call me Juan. But the big kids would literally
Nah.
go, Mikey. And I would
Yeah.
literally have a fight every
Yeah.
day.
I love
the
fighting.
boulevard
Once I realized
with
I could
some
fight
kid
and I
they
liked
put
the
me with. I mean,
competition of it,
every
I
day when I was
started
a
as
kindergartner
a,
and first
I
grader
started as
and
a yellow belt
second grader.
competing.
So like,
And
I don't
gotta
know. For
credit
me, I don't know
one
if
of the
I
guys
liked
who
fighting
taught me
or
one of
if
the
I was
best
just
lessons
good at it.
in
And
my
I
life,
was a
besides
little shit.
the people I
I
always
was
speak
super,
about,
super small.
was
but
Mark Williams.
I was good at
And Mark
fighting,
Williams
and
was a
I
true
liked
fighter.
to fight, and
Like
I wasn't afraid to fight.
I
I mean, I don't
didn't
care
like
if it
fighting
was a team
above
sport
my
or not,
weight.
but
And
you know,
Mark
by the time I got to martial
was
arts,
a guy like, oh, you don't want to
like
fight?
I
All right, I'll
remember,
fight heavyweight.
I'll never forget like my first practice. I never forget my first Saturday
he taught me
of
that part
sparring,
of fighting,
and I
which
didn't have
was,
gear on, and
you
they
know,
put a kid in
if
front of
you
me, and
were
I
going
just
to be a
reverse
fighter,
punched him in the
you know,
face,
you don't make
and I
excuses.
busted his
You
nose,
just
and they were
fight. So
like,
he made a lot of
can't
guys
punch
tough.
people in the
He made
face. And I'm
Kevin
like,
Padilla
and I had to
tougher
do
and made me
push-ups
tougher.
on the linoleum with my knuckles, and I was like, I went home crying to my parents because like, what happened? I'm like, I
Is this
punched
the menu?
student
Which
in
side of the
face
menu is
because I
this?
didn't
Go
like.
ahead.
What? I'm like, you want me to fight? Okay, this is fun. And so, you, but that's what surprised me that you didn't fight growing up because I know how much you love fighting right now with us. Yeah. So let, let's go. Let, let's go like this because you have. I'm looking at your list of stuff, and you have some good stuff. Let me ask. I'm gonna just take over real fast for you. So
what made me special about fighting was that
TJ,
I applied
like if you had
science
like in a
to
couple,
it.
what
So
made you special?
I
Young,
was
what made you?
Yeah, early
What
because
made
I
you
was a
special
science.
as a fighter? Because I know you put that on there.
science kid.
Okay,
and
we
I
talked
looked
about
at it.
athletes, and I
I
think we're going
broke
to talk
down the
about kind of
techniques, and I
development. But
wasn't
like
I
you
was
specifically, TJ,
unafraid
if you
to
had to
challenge convention.
characterize yourself, what made you
So
unique,
I looked at the way
different?
we
Because
kick,
how
and
many
I
people
said,
you
can
came
I
up
use
with?
science
I
to
know
make it better?
a
And
lot of
that's a
people you
longer
came up with,
conversation.
and how did
That's
you
what it is. What
become
about you, Coach?
special, different, unique?
I think if I can start at the bottom, like with the upbringing part, I think like I said, I never would choose to fight when I was younger. I never go looking for a fight. Like obviously, if I had to defend myself,
Sure.
I'm gonna defend myself, you know. But I think I was taught how to fight. I think I was able to learn the sport, and for good reason. Like I think, like you said, when I started, I was super small compared to everybody else. Tinier, smallest person in the room, lowest belt in the room. So you almost learn to defend yourself first, and you're taught how to fight. I think later on, I had to work knowing that I came from one spot of like not knowing how to fight, learning how to defend myself. Then all of a sudden, being like this, oh shoot, people look at me like the alpha male. People look at me like the guy they don't want to see, and I understood why and what they thought. So I mean, probably I think the understanding of like fighting in general, just the overall sense of it.
Young, what about you? What made you special, unique? Early. You took the earlier approach than a lot of people. Mm. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, you know what? For me, I I hear a lot of things. Oh, he's talented. He was this, he's that. But I think what gets lost with me is my work ethic. And TJ, you know, because you lived with me a long time. I like to work. I like to run. I like to kick. I like to practice. I like to lift. And people always said one's talented, but like I enjoyed the grind. Now, 55 years old, 54 years old, and I go to the gym every day at 6 a.m. Like I enjoy working hard. And I know that for me, I learned early on that I was process orientated. And so do I have a certain amount of gifts and a certain amount of intelligence? I do think I have maybe more than the average person, but my work ethic, I mean, I'd put up next to anybody, and not just for the moment that it was important. I mean, all the time, even now. And I think it carries, with me in my business and with my life and blah, blah, blah. So I think what made me special was my work ethic, from a really, really early age. And I always get like frustrated when I hear people say, oh, that person loves it and they're so dedicated to it. And I think they love it and they're dedicated to it because they're good at it and because it's rewarding them. But I was never like that. I mean, literally, I know it sounds like Rocky like, but I'm running in the streets at 5 o'clock in the morning before school. There's nobody outside. It's freaking 20 below, like that kind of stuff. And I didn't have to do that, but I just wanted to do that. And this was before I was even good, before I was even on a national team. So, I think a little bit of mindset, like you said, TJ. I was brought up with a strong, family background. I was brought up with some strong-minded coaches, and I never had a challenge in front of me that I didn't think was fixable. I mean, I really believed that I don't care who you are, I can figure out the puzzle. I can solve the puzzle. I never, ever was like, that's insurmountable, ever. So I think that kind of made me a little unique. But anyway,
When did you just start when did you stop doing all the other sports and start Taekwondo?
so specializing.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So mine was a little bit later. I mean, I was pretty serious about Taekwondo from the time I was in like sixth grade, but I still played basketball in sixth and seventh and eighth grade, but I stopped growing and everybody just shot past me. So it wasn't for me. The only sport that I kept with was soccer. And I hate people, oh, it's because you're with your feet. Now, I don't know why. I kept playing soccer all the way through high school, even through my Olympic stuff, is when I stopped.
What's late? What's late?
I started specializing. If I had a pinpoint
What do
of
you
time,
think is late?
I'm
You
gonna
started
say
when specializing?
freshman year of high school, because I played soccer, but I played it
That's the right
um,
time, I thought. But that's because when I
and
specialized,
I'm saying specialized, I mean I cut
you got
everything else
really
out.
better
I
at it.
played
But
it
here's
just in
what
the
the
season.
Olympic Committee
I
says.
didn't do extra.
The
I
Olympic
wasn't on
Committee
travel teams. I didn't go to
development
camps.
says
I played it
until
for my
you're
high school,
18,
and then that was it.
and this is
You know
a
what I'm saying?
study that Mike
But
Leonard
but I
did,
was training serious when I was
the
in
head
seventh
of
and eighth,
sport
grade and
development
stuff like
as
that. I
a
was putting in the
volunteer
time.
and
But
vice
when
president of the Olympic Committee,
I have a
team
story
handball
that I
player,
used to
really
talk to. I had
incredibly
a
bright
gym
guy.
teacher, and I remember being in
They say
football.
run,
In PE class,
jump,
and I would run.
turn,
And
and
I
stop.
remember when the first time I ran a 5 minute
Run
mile,
fast,
and I
be
said,
able
I'm
to
going to
jump,
run, 4
turn and
times before
stop.
the coach
And,
blows the
and,
whistle.
and
And
those
then
are
when the
the
coach
things that
he
matter.
says,
So
hey,
you can play
why don't you come out and play
virtually
DB or wide
any
receiver for
sport,
us? And I'm like,
as long as you
no,
develop
no,
those
I'm
key
gonna do
attributes,
Taekwondo.
and they're
I'm gonna do Taekwondo.
transferable to
And he's like,
many sports.
that's Taekwondo.
Now, the problem
karate
with
stuff.
that, as
And
you
after
guys
the
know,
Olympics, when I came back, he
is
remembered it. I didn't
because of
remember
the
it. He was like,
specialization of
he was,
AAU,
yeah,
like
listen to
AAU
me. I'm the one to tell you,
basketball and
don't worry
people
about
like
that
that,
Taekwondo crap,
you
that
feel like
Olympic
you're
stuff. Nah,
left
don't worry about that. He's
behind.
like,
So you
little
go
do
and
I
you
know.
specialize
So it
too
was kind of a
early,
funny story that
and
we
then it
had
actually
between each other.
burns
But
you out,
I
and
think
it
I
destroys your
specialized a little
muscle
bit
building.
late
So
as
when
it
you
relates to
specialize too
nowadays.
early, you get a
I would
certain
love to
set
debate
of
whether that's a good thing or a
sport-specific
bad thing, because
muscles, and you're always competing at that
now
level, and that's your world. So
I'm gonna say
my son,
I specialized by the
some
time I was a
others,
freshman in high
my
school.
son did a ton of sports. He didn't specialize in soccer till late middle school. Yeah, no, he did soccer his whole life, but he stopped playing other sports high school. He did he played basketball, he did football, he did all the sports, and he did soccer year round, but he didn't specialize in it. So you stopped playing on teams because you wanted to, or because they never picked you?
Pretty early. Mm. What do you? How about you, TJ? What I mean, what do you think is the, especially in Taekwondo right now? What is specialization okay?
I think I would go all the way down to at the latest 12 and 13. Just because of all the different things. I'm not a big fan of the cadet system and all that stuff. I think at 12 and 13, working through the system into like the regular junior division is a good time. Like for me, I think I stopped doing everything around. So I started at 11. I stopped probably taking any other sport seriously or I didn't play on many teams and stuff like that. Probably after right at 12 and 13 years old.
Yeah.
In high school, I ran a little bit of track, but like I said, it was more so for my endurance for Taekwondo, you know what I mean? So I was trying to do something extra, do something more, but I would say about 12 and 13 is when I kind of started. No, I just had stop. I think I just had no strong interest in doing those other things. Like it didn't draw me in like Taekwondo did. And it's crazy because I think at that time I was definitely more afraid of fighting than I was to go and shoot a ball in a basket or play football and tackle. I know. But for some reason, Taekwondo or fighting drew me in and I just stayed there. So about 12 and 13, it was kind of all or nothing.
I think it's interesting because, I mean, again, in our country, in America, man, we have some badass little kids, right? Because they have the accessibility to good training and good coaches is there. Accessibility to good competitions and travel is there because we're a richer country. You know, when you look at some of these other countries, they tend to develop a little bit later. You know, I know the European and the Eastern European model is a way later development. They believe in playing and playing games. And TJ, you know, we've gone to like some European camps and we're playing all these little weird games and we're kind of like, yo, man, are we going to train? But this is how they keep their longevity. They're not redlining it all the time. And that's the problem. I wanted to talk about that, the specialization here in America, just in Taekwondo in general, because I could talk about a specific athlete in a second, but I feel like we have these badass 11 and 12 and 13-year-olds, and then also I just don't see them at 16, 17, 18. You know, it's like they're cadet champions, you know, but then I don't know, it could be factors. It could be they don't grow. It could be they're burnt out because they get injured. I mean, we're seeing a lot more injuries now because people are they're specializing in.
It's the weight cutting. It's the weight cutting. It has to be the weight cutting. Like, I don't know. And I think I've said this before, but I didn't cut weight until my first year of seniors. Every year I went up a division for juniors, every single year. And obviously probably not the best case scenario because you want to, normalize and blah, blah, blah. But I think it's the weight cut. It's when we go back to body frames and all that stuff like that, the tall kid, whether we say it or not as coaches, I think the Taekwondo world knows like, oh, look at this tall kid, there's no way he's probably eating what he should be eating. Like, let's be honest about it.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of determines a lot of that burnout. Also, like I said about the cadet system, I think trying to win too early.
Yeah.
I think those are supposed to be developing. Obviously, you want tournaments and blah, blah, blah and all that stuff, but
I think the weight cutting is true, TJ, and I think it's I know they went to the day because again, your era too. You weighed in the morning, right?
Yeah,
TJ,
I mean, it's
never.
There's a reason I don't coach. I don't sit in chairs.
Well, anyway,
I was after that.
I think
the reason I don't sit in chairs anymore is I don't have anything to add to the conversation. So if I were to look at myself now in my growth path, and you and I have talked about this for years,
I think it's worse because people know
athletics and coaching and training and competing as a path.
How many people
and
did you
there's
fight,
a certain
TJ?
point where
you knew
are,
they would have weighed in at 7 o'clock in the morning. There's
an
no
athlete,
way.
a soldier. Then there's another point where you're a mentor, and then there's a point where you're a gatekeeper.
So I actually think
so I'm in the torchbearer gatekeeper phase of my life, which means
It's not
I have
safer.
stuff to add to the conversation,
you
and
add
this
in
is
the whole running
probably
away and part
you
of it. But
experienced
I
it
think
because
that's
when we
probably why
developed
you.
the coaching program
I don't know.
that
You tell
USA
me.
Taekwondo
Like I
still
said,
tries
I don't know
to
if it
use.
was the. I hate
I
using the
was
word
a
pathway,
gatekeeper.
but
I was
if
a
I saw a
torchbearer.
way
I didn't
from
develop
going where I was
the
to kinda
content.
be
You
on the
guys
world
developed the
championship team and really
content.
be
I
on the Olympic
organized
team
it
and
and
do
added
some
my experience
bigger and
to
better
it.
things. I
So
think
my
the interest
coaching
in that
style
kept me around a
right
little bit
now,
longer. And
I get
obviously, I won a
way
lot
too
when I was younger, so
frustrated,
that helps when
and
you're
I
winning
can
things
see,
and kind of
just like my
developing through
instructors
things.
probably could
But
see in my
I don't
game,
know. It kind of grabbed me,
things that
and I
would
stayed with
help
it. And it was one of
them.
those
And
things I think
I
was
was
harder for me
reviewing
to
one of
do
my
than
athletes'
probably
fights
any other
this
sports,
weekend
you
with
know?
him,
What
and then I gave him a
Young,
very
you might
specific thing.
think
So
about
that's
this
my
too. Like,
role
let's,
now.
let's
That's my
transition
coaching
into
style
that.
now. But
The
you
thing
know
you
me as
talked
a
about the
coach.
coaching styles. Do
I
you think
was,
coaching styles is a real
I
thing?
was ridiculous. I'd take an athlete that wasn't listening or performing, and in the middle of a fight, I'd yell at them, threaten them, hit them to get them to perform. And that was, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, the stories. If you were ever there, you saw it. Like there was an athlete, Livo. He only performed if he was under direct threat of a coach who was willing to kill him. And so at the World Championships, between rounds, I talked to him the first, second round. He wasn't listening. So by the third round, when he came back to the chair, I punched him in the chest and I told him, if you don't do what I tell you to do, I am going to run into the ring and kick you in the face. I will kill you. Go in the fight and do what I tell you to do. And the referee actually came over and was trying to figure out what to do with me because he didn't know if he could give me a warning, right? So the athlete goes in and performs. And by the way, I did this at nationals too, because that's the only way he performed. He beat Jeff Pinnarock within an inch of his life, to my delight. And so he goes in, and every time he kicks the athlete, he turns around to look at me to see if I'm going to come in and get him. And then he's so amped up that he kicks the guy falls on the floor on his hands and knees, and he runs over and punts the guy in the chest. Like he just loses his mind. But yeah, not the best coaching style, but
Sounds like someone I
it
know.
worked for him. So, but there are other guys we've talked about before that had, there was a coach that went in and had the athlete sit down and sat him down and looked at him and said, take off your helmet. And as soon as he took off his helmet, he slapped him in the face as hard as he could. And he says, do I have your attention now? And, I was like, I didn't sit in that coach's chair, by the way. I stood, and didn't take my helmet.
Hey, Flork. Thanks, Flork.
They will now.
Yeah. Well, what about you? You think coaching things are real? Or coaching styles?
I think when I hear the question, I think more like in gym coaching or style of coaching or expectations of what you expect from the athletes. I think in chair, a lot of different things can happen in the chair at the competition. Sometimes you got to be the barky coach. Sometimes you got to be the let me wipe your nose coach, depending on the situation, whatever you got going on that day. I think, but I think there is a method of coaching that people have. I wouldn't say style, but I think the word method makes more sense. And I think when you understand the game or understand where we are now, I think that's what kind of dictates in it. I think also understanding the people that you're working with. So I would say yes and no. I think a coach and my coaches have always had full skill sets. They can do anything and everything, whatever needs to be done. And I felt like their finger was always on the pulse. So if something needed to be changed in training, it wasn't necessarily okay, they weren't afraid to turn the wheel to the left a little bit because they saw that was going to get the room to where they needed to go. So I guess they were more like goal oriented kind of coaching as opposed to on the spot. It has to be this, and this. And if that formula works out, it's great. But I think the people that I was able to work with growing up just had their finger on the pulse a little bit and kind of, they knew when to push and pull and to go left and to go right,
I think what gets lost is, and because I'm a sports person, I think this also made me unique because I played so many sports. I kind of got my idea. But listen, let's use American football. American football, you have to tackle, you have to block, you have to pass, you have to run, you have to catch. Boxing, you have to jab, you have to cross, you have to hook, you got to uppercut. There's certain things in all sports that are across the board. Everybody has to have them. Now, how you teach them, there's a method. There's, what's important in your style of football is the brand of football that you have, or basketball. Some people believe you shoot 3-pointers and run up and down. Some people mean you have 10, 12 passes. Some football teams, they run the ball. Some people throw the ball. Some people win a defense. So I actually believe there is a coaching style and there is a method. There is a certain standard that everybody should have to be successful. But if I'm a front leg style, or I'm a clinch style, or I'm a defensive style. Now you're right, TJ. I think that a good coach, because we're not teaching a team sport, so we can't play one way. You're going to have different bodies. You have different ethnic backgrounds. You have different social economic backgrounds, and each athlete will have a different characteristic. And a good coach could tap into all of them. But unfortunately, we don't have individual trainings. We train in a group setting in an individual sport. So I do believe there is a method. I mean, there is a peak brand of fighting. It's kind of changed a little bit.
Well, I found
coaches like Terrence and coaches like Boy. I was watching Coach Lee yesterday, and he was doing a drill. We literally did the same drill.
A short clip,
and then he had another little thing. And he was talking about movement. I'm like, we literally. And I was like, look at how our philosophies are very, very similar. Even though we're outside, we have a brand. We have a style of the way we do things.
Everything is not
and that's how we go about,
coaching.
So I know you can look at one coach and say, man, Ramos is a fiery coach.
That's not what the fuck I do.
Dragon is a fiery coach.
You know what I mean?
You look at some Tony, he's kind of quiet.
Feel like men
Actually, he has to bark. So I think the styles of in the area can change depending on the situation. But I do believe that there's different methodologies to getting the job done in a coaching format. Listen, I've seen a lot of what I thought were good coaches. And then when I see the methodology.
Anyway, I apologize for the language.
Because it's horrible.
But that is one of my favorite videos. That's actually a guy who was on an Olympic pathway. And then his eye got dislodged.
Give their information
coaching in
properly.
Wall Street. And that video goes around the internet. And
one or two other athletes
my favorite quote for him is he goes, not everything is for everybody. He goes, some people are
they a good coach or do they have a good athlete?
Some people are not.
Sorry to say that, but that's the truth.
If you ever want to have 10 seconds of fun, listen to it. You got to watch that whole video. But anyway, go ahead.
I love that one.
Though, yeah, I've seen that one before.
Well, that's because
that was a good one.
The thing in Waddle
rooms to feel a little bit more like that. You know what I mean?
So the one thing that you can say for certain, at least in the older style of fighting, maybe not in the newer style, was a thin weight and a heavyweight. That's a different game. A thin weight and a featherweight. That's a different game. Feather and light you can kind of lump together, and maybe put or welter and light or feather and bantam, but fin and fly, that's a different game. And heavy and middle, even between heavy and middle is a different game.
Right. So do you think that, I guess I would understand when we talk about individuals.
Yeah.
Like I said, I know it's funny you brought up the boxing thing. I think that's how boxing is. I think if the fighters fall they fall with someone that knows how to like make their attributes come out, obviously. And that's what we do. You know what I mean? I think that's what you're supposed to do as a coach. I know we tend to work in group settings from a developmental standpoint, but once you hit the national team levels and everything like that, like I think that's definitely should be some kind of like specialization. I don't think everybody can do everything or should be forced to do everything in the same way, you know? I think that's the part where it gets a little chunky for me. And I think some of the success pockets for these other countries are because I think they've understood how to like specialize for certain athletes in certain situations.
But I think it's cool. But I think that's interesting because we all train. I mean, it's funny. I'm going to go back to Korea. I'll go back to us. And I think we trained in a group setting and then we did our specialization later on. So I agree. You can't train everybody the same way. And I think you're right, TJ, as you get to the top, right? Once you have these fundamentals, you're good at Taekwondo fundamentally. You're good at physical shape. And then you start to specialize in your style and your unique ability. I mean, I think certain time, this is, I was going to transition to it. It's taboo for an athlete to be with one instructor and then change with somebody else. Sometimes they change for the wrong reason because they think the grass is greener on the other side. Because some coach sweet talks them and says, "Come over here, we're really good," and they drink the juice. That's happened for many, many years. But I think a smart athlete and a smart parent, maybe even a smart coach, would find somebody and say, you know what, that style or that person would work with my athlete. Because that's what they do. A football player, if I'm a quarterback, I'm not going to a running school. I'm going to a coach that's going to air the ball out, right? If I'm a running back, I'm not going to a program that's going to throw the ball 40 times a game. I want them to hand the ball off 30 times. And it's the same thing, TJ. You know, you've had athletes. I've had athletes that work with you and you were able to get their skill set. You pinpointed a unique skill set, mentally, emotionally, technically. And then you were able to maximize their abilities and the results. If they jump to another program, for some reason that person doesn't get it, all of a sudden that same athlete looks average at best. So I think it's interesting, like, do you jump to a successful program or do you find a coach that works uniquely with your style?
I was in a situation. I left Coach from Mark's school and came to Miami, Florida. You know what I mean? I'm looking at the guy who gave me like the best of what I had growing up in my whole base set, and Coach Salim as well. I got to work with him as well, and you know, making those decisions and moving around. It was based off the coach, and for me the environment, and the environment in which the coach developed, the environment in which the coach pushed were the important things. You know, it's hard to say successful coach in a sense, because I mean, I'm not sure what we view as success anymore. How about that?
Yeah.
How about that? I'm not sure where the line of what's successful and what's not successful lies. So it would have to be, for me, if I was making a decision, it'd be the room, obviously, with the people, but also how the coach interacts with those people in the room. How does he get the best out of those people in the room that's gonna in return make me better? You know what I mean? But definitely probably looking for, at this day and age, and I hate to say it, probably looking for, it's got to be a coaching situation, because I think when I say winning, I mean, I think win consistently. Mm-hmm. Like that was always a difference between, I think, before the ranking points and now with the ranking points. Like you wanted to, the only thing you had was, I got to win this tournament and I got to go win the next tournament. I got to win the next tournament. You weren't worried about getting 8 points here, 7 points here, falling in a pocket. You wanted to win every single time you were out. And I think that kind of changed a little bit. So for me, it would have to be being with a coach that can understand you, develop you, and get you to a point where you can win consistently in this arena of some of the programs being higher level programs or having more funding or having a better situation in general.
I like that a lot because you say define winning and stuff like that, you know, and consistency. I like to use the word performing, because sometimes you fight well and you don't get a medal. You know what I'm saying? And so when I look at these athletes that are hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold, I see these programs that have a bunch of athletes and no athletes, and a couple good athletes and results, and then nothing. Like I don't value them. I don't value them at all. You know, I think that a room is important, but I think it's more how the person conducts the room. You know, I mean, we are specializing more and more and more, and it is difficult to get 15. You know, I'm gonna use a bad word, killers in the room. You know, like where you got 20, 30 people. We always talk about that all the time. I mean, right? Yeah. I mean, I was, I'm looking at this. I'm in Peru and I'm watching the whole Brazil team and then some other people and I'm looking, I'm going, and we have 25 quality people on this mat right now. And even in Brazil, if we were all together, holy cow. And it's hard. We don't have a centralized training and that's not the method over there. But I think the room is important, but how the person conducts the room. Because you could put a bunch of good people in there, put the wrong coach that doesn't know how to relate, like you said, individually, that doesn't know how to motivate, discipline, inspire, then we got a problem. Because you wrote in there what creates longevity. That's what creates longevity. The coach, the coach's ability to motivate, teach, and inspire, to discipline, all in the right balance. You could be the greatest technician in the world, but if you don't know how to inspire or discipline, how are you going to keep the room under control? If all you do is discipline, and rah, but you don't have the technical expertise. That's why, I mean, again, I'm gonna throw some shade at some people, but I see some people that they're good for the moment, and then you don't see. So I have to question, how thorough are they as a coach? You know what? Again, I'm using sports. Look at the NFL. Right here in Miami, you got this head coach that has lost his team. Then you got a guy like Andy Reid, from the Kansas City Chiefs. Old cat. How is he able to do it? His method, his ability to reach those guys. You know what I'm saying? So you can use the old, and just because you have the new cool talk and the cool jump on the box and jump off the box and, do some crazy drill, doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it consistent. And that's what I've seen. I mean, when I look at
Coach
even
Wooden,
around the world,
I like his philosophy.
I see hot teams
but
come
I found
and go.
Another mentor of mine I'm going to share with you guys.
And go. And I almost have to say, are they writing an athlete
Charlie Brothers,
two,
not Warner
or
Brothers.
three? And they got a couple good athletes that people
Winning,
gravitate
giant
towards
marquee
them.
name comes through
So
on
what
your
do they do
calling
with
right in. It's
everybody?
like, winning.
For me, that's
We're saying that you're
the sign of a
bipolar.
good
I'm
program.
winning.
I mean, I see in America, I see some really good cadet programs.
Anyway,
really good junior
I know we've
programs. They've
been
good for
talking a lot
long
about
time.
Charlie
Winning.
Sheen.
That's
That's
in your
really
program.
going
That guy,
I was like,
that girl, that
I
woman, she
wanted
does
to
a
share
good
that
job
because I
with
thought
these,
it's pretty funny. But there's
emerging
something to be said in a
athletes,
weird
seniors.
way, which is
So it's I think it's a little controversial in our
as
country.
A coaching
But when I
philosophy,
look
we
at other
talked a lot
countries,
about this when we were developing.
I always
the
say one of the
program,
most underrated coaches in the
which
world
I
is
still haven't
Tony
gotten the thank you note from
Croatia.
USA Taekwondo.
That dude has been around for a
performance
long
first,
time.
winning second.
And there's a lot. He doesn't do
Athlete
many
first,
seminars.
coach
He doesn't do
second,
many,
right?
social
And
media stuff.
As we thought
But
about
that
those
dude,
things, all the
he
coaches
always
you're
gets a
talking
champion.
about probably
You look at the Thai coach,
use
the
that
Korean guy
methodology
Choi.
because you
Like
can't
not the Thai coach you're
develop
talking about, Coach
sustained competitive excellence
Young.
without
But there's other
having
same
a
thing. He always finds a
performance-first
finweight,
culture.
flyweight, bantamweight,
So
featherweight.
you may not get the
Always
result
finds a
you
champion.
want,
That to
but
me
how
is
did
like
you perform, right? The kids,
that's a
I
real
go back
coach
to
with
my
real-
son's soccer thing, which I don't know anything about, but they played, they're an academy, they played a very good academy team, LAFC from Los Angeles, and they're going down to play LA Galaxy this weekend. So they played a good game. It was 2-2. And then at the last second, a guy scores a goal on the other team, right? Because and it was almost an own goal, right? So when you look at that game as a whole, the game was a great performance game. Two great teams playing each other, great. You look at the result, you could yell at, they lost. And so what was the outcome? Well, their coach, who was, by the way, the Olympic coach, Coach Covello for the Earthquakes, he was an Olympic coach, assistant coach at the last Olympics. He said, great performance. He said, unfortunate outcome, but we dominated the ball. And so he had exactly the right mentality, right? And we always talked about this. So you want to know a trait that an athlete should have. An athlete should be able to schedule and review. So immediately after a match, they should ask themselves those 5 questions. that we developed. And at the end of that, they should review what went well, what went less well, and then think about that in the terms of performance, whether they won or lost. And if you have that ability to remember, self-reflect, and then make solutions for the outcomes, then you will be a great athlete. Not a good athlete, you'll become a great athlete. The difference between good and bad athletes is their ability to, absent the outliers, their ability to intellectualize the sport. In other words, understand the playing environment. Sport, it's called sport IQ now. Their ability to understand the playing environment, what's necessary to succeed in it, how they performed in that environment, and make corrective actions to win. That's it.
He lost.
Right? And by bipolar, no, by winning. Anyway, thank you.
Uh, I don't know, TJ, like, do you have like a mantra for your school? Like, I mean, maybe it's not a one that you posted or something like that, but like if you close your eyes and stuff like that and you say, especially because, you've been, I feel weird for you because I know you've been coaching for a long time. And I mean, you've coached the damn Olympic Games, you coach the World Championships, Grand Prix, everywhere. And then, but now you have your own system, you know what I'm saying? Like you outside of the military, it's TJ's thing. I can, do you have like I said, inside your brain or a written like kind of philosophy that you say, this is how I envision everything?
I think for me and like kind of like
It's
the
it's
whole
it's
path I
happened. It's
follow my
happened to
guys is
all of us. I mean,
repetition and focus.
I go back to
Yeah.
I'm very
1991,
big
right?
on the
And I'm
things that we
fighting
do
Korea in
every
the
single day as
semifinal,
opposed to the things that we do one
and
time is good.
I fought a
twice is
great
good. I think
match.
trying
Right?
to get my
Score
guys to
wasn't.
understand the
Score was
consistency
even,
of the sport. Like
even,
there has
and
to, I
the
know it's
last
crazy we can make it
round they
and
gave the
the
match. They
referees
gave
can do
the
this, the floors
superiority
can
to
be
Korea,
slippery,
and so I
the
fought a
spin
great
doesn't
match. I
score,
mean,
but like
unbelievable
there's something
match.
about the
So
people
the
that win is
performance
their
was
ability to
amazing.
focus in
The
those
outcome
moments and the
wasn't what I
consistency of like
wanted, nor was
putting
it
it. Maybe you didn't
fair.
score that one time, but you hit the
That's a
right
different
spot.
story. But
Having the
it
bravery enough
is
to
what
hit
it
that
is.
spot again,
So when I
change the
walked
spot if
away
it's
from
not
that
working, but
match,
just so for me, it's
I
more
had to
of that, just
reflect
kind
for a
of
moment because
focus and like
there's first the
repetition. So I
initial
spend a lot of
anger,
time kind of.
whether you're a coach or an athlete.
I try to
And
talk
then
to
there's
it,
the second
talk to
one,
them,
which is,
and put the
okay, let
game
me
in a
look at
very
this on
strict light.
balance.
Sometimes
How did I
not
really
you're
do?
supposed to land
Right.
like this. You're
And I've had
supposed
my
to be
share of
here,
matches
and then we
where
can change
I
off of it.
probably
But I
should
think
have
sometimes
lost
because our
and I
game has
won.
gotten
And
so
I wasn't
frivolous and
happy with that
free
either. I think that
that
the winner should win
some
and the
people
loser
skip
should
over trying
lose.
to get their guys
But
to
again,
do
you got to
the
go
stuff that
back
you're
to
supposed to do
performance
all the
first,
time, every single time. And I
winning
think that's the
second.
mark
And
of
I think that's
professionalism
a
when
great
they don't
coach.
make those
And that's
mistakes.
a
And that
conversation
wasn't
for
even
another
trying
day.
to
I
do
mean,
that,
we
but
still
that's
have,
exactly
I
what
think there's going to be a
you
part
heard,
B on
what you just
this
talked about with this
athlete one
coach,
because I
right?
think it's,
Just,
we
you know
haven't
what?
really,
You,
we haven't
you got
even
unlucky that the ball
begun
bounced
to
and went in the
break
goal. You know what I'm saying? It
the
was a great
surface
game. You
on
got
this. And I
unlucky.
think we
You
need
kicked the
to
spot you're
because
supposed to. You set the
we
trap
need
like
to
you're
talk
supposed to.
about
You
that
did the
just to
movement you're
say
supposed to. And,
what,
and
you know,
the electronics didn't
what
go
is
off.
necessary. There you go.
Well,
Yeah, there you go.
yeah. Yeah, it's not. Yeah. I'd,
What you coach?
I mean, I have, I,
Same question.
yeah. I mean, I have a couple different things, but like, let's just say, have a couple of different, like how we compete, how we train, whatever. But one of my personal coaching philosophy is old school work ethic with the new school, like, a motivation. So you know me, I'm an old school guy. I'm a no frills guy. You come to my gym, it's not pretty. There's no air conditioning, blah, 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 blah. I don't put up with bullshit. You don't like it, you can leave. I mean, it's very simple in my gym. I don't care if it's a mom, dad, or athlete. It's my way or no way. That's just the only way. I'm not going to let the athletes or the, convicts run the asylum. The inmates run the asylum. So I'm a very old school like that. I talked about it earlier. I like to work
Well,
hard.
I think
Don't
we've
have
only
pity for
scratched the
people if,
surface. So I think we need to.
you have
So
to
for
lose
me, I'm
weight.
just
Nobody lost
like,
more weight than me.
all right,
So
so
that's
let's
your
go
problem, your
back
choice.
and
I can help
figure
you
out
get to help. But at the same time, if you
the
choose to
next
fight a
part of
certain
this,
weight,
because I think these are meaningful
don't
conversations.
complain
It's
about it.
just
So I'm very
too
old school like
easy
that. But
to take
I
shots
understand
at
the modern athlete. I
organizations
understand that
and
you can't beat
individuals and
them and beat them and
performances.
beat them
I think
and
at the
give
end
them
of
a
the
little
day,
praise. You
the
gotta,
intellectual capacity of this
you
group
gotta
and the
work
people
with
that
the
listen and
current
that
athlete. You gotta work with the current
interact with
mentality.
us
The current mentality is
deserves more. And so
fast,
we're going to
with
do
the
this
phones,
again. And I
fast with
want
the
to pick up
internet,
where we
fast with
left
the
off.
AI. So
And
I
then
think, even though I'm
I
54
want to
years old,
think
I've been
about
able
it
to keep
because I think
that
you said a
modernization.
couple of
So
interesting
old school
things. One
work
was
ethic, new
old
school
school
mentality.
mentality,
So
new
that's a
school, and then
very general one for me,
adapting
but
to the athletes
it's a
as you find them.
paradox, right? And it keeps me in
Because
balance
there's
with
no doubt
everybody.
that we have a
I can be
different
sweet,
generation of people that
I
think
can laugh, I
differently,
can joke, I can make fun of
and
somebody.
they
The
couldn't,
next minute I can be like, you
they
gotta
wouldn't
be out of your
flourish in a
damn
different
mind.
environment. So
If
how do
you're
you
gonna
get the
walk in
best?
this
It doesn't
gym
matter.
10
How do you
minutes
get the
late and
most
act like
out
you're on
of them?
a
Because that's what
freaking
you have.
vacation. I
So,
will
and I'm
go
not talking
nuts.
about
You
Taekwondo
know what
in
I'm saying?
general. I'm
So
just talking about
it's just
people in
for
general.
me, it's a little bit
I
of a
watch,
balance,
yeah.
but it served me well. So uh, this is fun. I like this. I mean, this is kind of a philosophical debate. I mean, like you said, Young, I think we could get into maybe something even more detailed and more. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure, for sure. I want to the thing. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, listen, I watch my sons practice every day. And then the ride home, yeah, yeah. And dude, I don't interact, but when he gets in the car, I'm like,
yes,
all right, yeah. How was
yes.
that touch? How was this? Because that's, I want him to
But
be
it doesn't matter.
successful. And then I realize
Yeah,
it
yeah.
may not be it's an old school mentality, but it is what it is. I was self-modulating.
Let me.
I mean, I
I'll
think
throw
that
one
we
more
were
to you.
harder on
One more to you.
ourselves
You
than any
said just
coach
the
could
out thing. TJ, you'll
probably
know
be.
now because
So the new,
shoot, Young,
I had a kid.
like when
I have
we
a
were
kid in my
growing up,
class,
our
my regular
parents were not
Taekwondo class,
involved as
and I
nowhere
say,
near as
okay,
much.
come on
They
this side of
weren't
the room. He goes,
these latchkey
why?
parents that were watching
I
every
go,
practice. Blah
why?
blah 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 blah.
I go,
You
do I
dropped
look
off.
like your
You
mother or your
trained. You
father? I'm
competed.
not your
They
mother.
had
I'm not your father.
little
I'm
to
not your friend. I'm
no
not your teacher
interaction
in school.
with
You shouldn't
where
say it
you
to
were
them
going to
either,
compete,
but
why
that's
you're
on
going to
them.
compete,
Here,
what
we
to
don't
do.
have a
Like
why.
little to none.
Why? Because I told you to
But
do it. This
nowadays,
is a martial
that's
arts
another
school.
factor. You
Start
got the
running.
parents that are
And so,
so
the
involved
next day, same
every
thing.
day in
Why? And I
practice,
look at him. So I finally
every
come over and I go,
competition. I mean,
are you
watching
a
videos.
prince?
I saw one of my
Are you
parents
a
the other
prince in
day.
your
I
house?
was like,
Does
hey,
mommy
look at
tell you
coach.
you're
I
a
won't say that.
prince?
He's out there
You're not a
talking to
prince
another
here.
dad.
You're
He's
a
like
servant. You're a
doing this stuff.
serf.
And I'm like,
There's only one. This
I
is
go,
a
look
kingdom,
at coach
and I'm in
so-and-so out
charge.
there.
I am the
That's
king.
a real thing.
And so you need to learn that in
Another
life because you're going to have to
great
actually
topic
enter
to
the
add
real world.
into
And the
the
real world doesn't
pressures
care
of
how
the
you feel. They
athletes.
don't care. You can't go to
Yeah.
HR. And I know you guys have seen that video
Oh,
of
you're
the
gonna
Do you ever see that video of the HR girl? Oh, you want to see it? I'll send it to you privately. Um, it's
Yeah. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah.
which is okay, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, listen, if you want to put up with,
Yeah.
you want to put up with that, that's up to you. In other words, if you as an individual want to put up with it, I don't think it's okay. In other words, I think that in life, and I've talked about this before, you have I have a professor. Like, the professor was 2 years older than me, but he was my professor in law school, right? Went to Harvard. I see him to this day. I call him professor.
Yeah.
I have a professor. I have a dean. I call him dean. I have an instructor. I call him grandma, whatever. That's me. I'm just old school that way. Once you have that relationship, I don't want you to violate.
No,
I don't
don't
want
show
to
it to
violate
us.
that relationship, and I don't want you to. Don't call me. Don't. We're not going to hang out.
But it's I feel like I've been Taekwondo and martial arts schools we talk about old school, new school, but like I feel like I figured that out really early, really fast without being like part that even. You know what I mean? I guess I mean had the whole rest of the room was in order, so you knew that you just did what you were told. That was a part of it. Like
There's also a societal thing, right? You learn it from your parents. You learned it at school. Like you said, Young, your analogy right there is spot on. That's how people are nowadays. They ask questions instead of following orders. There's time to talk and time to listen. Is it? Is it? I think we need to teach that. Of course. Listen, we're gonna.
I think I don't think it's even about like, I think we're going to make it sound like, oh, people need to be robots or say yes or no sort of stuff. I guess the biggest thing for me, what I didn't feel a need as an athlete, and I try to give my athletes the same feeling. I didn't feel a need to have to question them because I knew we were on the same team. I knew if they're
I have that
something, it's for the
conversation
betterment of
every
me
day with a
and
parent.
my
And I have
success.
that
That's
conversation.
what a coach is
And
there
you
for.
guys know,
So I
my
feel
new
like I
model
kinda
is
looked
really
at it
simple.
that way.
I come in and I
felt the
flip the
why or
script.
what
They
or
come in,
who
I
or-
said, thank you for
But no,
coming
I
in.
would do it because it was
Today
right.
is an
I thought it was
interview
right.
No,
and,
but
and an
but
assessment.
that's what I'm saying.
The
Societal,
assessment will
I
be of
think.
your
I mean,
child's
we're going
physical
off. We
capacities.
end this on
And
this
I'm going
one.
to interview
Like,
you.
we're
And
going
if
out of a tangent
after
here, but
interviewing you today,
in
if you're a good
society,
fit for me
like,
and
you're
my
right,
program,
asking questions
I
and
will
getting
take you.
information
If you're
is
not a
is
good
good.
fit for me, I'll
We should
suggest
all
other
search
places
that
you
out.
can go that
But
might
like,
be a better fit
just
for you.
randomly
If I
question
don't think you're a
authority
good fit for
any
anyone,
reason. No, a
I
father and
won't
mother are
recommend
father and
anywhere
mother.
else.
They're
And
supposed
they
to
all
teach
look at me and I
lead
go, I'm
their kids,
old.
right? Make them strong.
I'm a
Teachers
unicorn.
at
There's
school,
only one of
you're
me in the
teaching
entire
them at
world.
school.
I'm
If
an
you come
Olympic
into a
gold
martial
medalist
arts
and a
school,
ninth degree
you're
black
there to
belt in
learn
my
martial
sport.
arts. If
And
you're
I
on a football team,
developed
you're there to be coached.
curriculum.
You're not
And
there
I'm
to
a role
question,
model.
ask why.
And I don't want, I'm too
there's a
old to
right
waste
time
time
and
with
place
people that
for it,
I'm not going to be able to benefit.
respectfully.
So
But we've gone way past
you're
that. People,
interviewing us
why?
as well. I
Wait,
get
and they're
that.
not even
So if
being
it's a
mean
good fit
about
for you,
it.
you'll
They just
come.
don't know any
But
better. Because
no
it's
stretch of the
adults like
imagination,
us
think that
that
you're
are too
choosing
afraid to
us. We're
parent,
choosing
too
you for
afraid
our
to teach.
community.
That's what's great about martial arts
And
schools. It's like,
80% of
look,
the people
I tell it all
I
the
take,
time. I'm like, here, we're the boss.
10%
Here,
I
this is how we do things.
recommend
This is how
somewhere
people perform
else,
such things. This
and
is how Master Myrtle
10%
teaches and
I
talks.
don't
I'm
even
trying to help
talk
the
to.
parents
I walk
do
away.
their job.
And
So their
you had
kids
a
to get better
conversation
at
with a
school,
parent yesterday,
or be
which
better
was,
on another team.
I said, I don't
But I don't think we
parent
should be
parents. I
afraid
said, but I will
to-
give you my advice. I said, when you bring your son, oh, I'm struggling to bring Johnny to Taekwondo. No, I don't struggle. I say, I have this conversation with my kids, and you've heard this before. We're going to be doing this thing. Get ready. You can ask me one question. After you ask me that question, we're still doing it. So that's up to you. So my kids don't ask questions. They also can't make decisions, but that's a different story. But the reality is, and I tell the parents, I said, yeah, she goes, but once I get him here, I go, yeah. I said, he's a kid. And last story, because it's just a funny one. I had a long talk with this parent 20 years ago when I first opened the school in this community. And the woman comes up to me and she goes, oh, I had, Master Perez, I had a long talk with my son, Johnny. And Johnny, I asked Johnny this and I asked Johnny that. And I asked Johnny, and Johnny has decided. And I go, so I look at her and I go, I'm sorry. I said, do you have another son? She goes, no, I have one. It's my first child. I go, So you had a long talk with your 3-year-old about what he'd like to do. I said, okay, watch this. Johnny, how you doing today? Johnny, you love Taekwondo. Oh, yeah, yeah. You want to leave your house and move in here and teach Taekwondo for me, don't you? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you want to come to Taekwondo every day. And I look at the mom, I go, what you value, Johnny will value. What you tell Johnny, Johnny will like. That's reality. And that's the mentality that's been lost, because I do get those parents, and those are the ones I don't take, where they're like, well, I talked to him, and I go, and it was just the other day. This was like a 12-year-old, 11 or 10-year-old. So I look at the mom, and she tells me this, and so she's going to bring the kid in for a second intro. She goes, well, I said, I'm sorry. You're the parent. No, you're not going to ask your son what he wants to do. I didn't ask your son what he wanted to do. I asked you what you wanted to do. So I'm not interested in what your son wants to do, but that's up to you if you are, so, but anyway, all right. We got, it's been a long one today. We're going to come back to this topic. Thank you. Pewter. You've been elevated to pewter, which is a mix of bronze and I think copper or silver. So you are now pewter. And I think you should change that on your thing. And if you can't spell it, I'll send you it. I'll send you a way to spell it. But as always, you are I like you for different reasons, but you also brought an interesting perspective, because you're not as hardcore as Coach Moreno and I are in certain aspects of it. And so and having come up where you came up, you have an interesting blend. But as always, this has been the Warehouse 15. And if we said something that offended you, we have accomplished our goal. Sorry, not sorry. We are out. So I think, yeah.
And off on our philosophy. TJ, that was awesome. Yeah. That was fun. Deuce. And you know what I think is one of the most